All right. Good morning and welcome to Unity of Joplin.
Howdy. How are ya?
I am good. I am Reverend Gordon
Good.
Tyler, and the other voice you hear there and probably see is Ann Leach, who is
Good
our
morning,
mistress of
Facebook
ceremonies
world.
today.
Yes. So happy to be with you all as we launch into today's service. I want to invite you to share with the world that you are here via your social media. And we do that with our social media check-in. Gordon is going to pull up the slide
I
with
am
our
pushing buttons right now.
and it is "We Are Free Together"
No, it's
at
not.
Unity. Oh, that's what's on my cheat sheet.
Well, the guy who wrote your cheat sheet messed up.
No
was me.
problem.
Our check-in today is I live in a world of color.
I see that now. Thank you.
Sorry about
So
that.
just share that out on your social media accounts, and you might even want to start a watch party to invite your friends to join you in today's service. We would love to have them. We are blessed to have a powerful, dedicated, committed team of people working behind the scenes every week to bring you these lessons and the service.
Yep.
And so we want to thank, first of all, the musicians that contribute every week. Thank you, Gary and Jerry and John. You guys, you just kick it out of the park every single week. And Michael, who is the office manager at Unity, he helps kind of coordinate the recording and making it all available to us. So thank you guys very much. Let's see, the rest of the team, we're very excited to have with us Jefferson Myers, who will be our trustee of the day. He's in the Facebook chat. Any questions you have, anything you need, you just ask and Jeff will make it happen. That's a pretty bold claim, but he can do it, I'm sure.
And before we go any further,
yes,
Ann, let's do our opening song.
Okay.
Because
that's
the order my slides are in.
Okay.
So feel free to sing along, hum along, whatever. Here we go. Well,
I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now. I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now. I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now. I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now.
I just love that arrangement that they did.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
That's our musicians and tech.
Yeah, so you got to hear John and Gary in that song. Thank you so much. We've already given thanks for the rest of the music team. Bless them. And here's Jefferson. There was Jefferson, our trustee of the day. Thank you, Jeff, for your service. And I'm Ann. Yes, kind of the MC of the show today. And of course, our message and meditation will be with Reverend Gordon. And we are definitely glad to have you all here and joining us for the service. We give thanks in advance for what we are about to receive. That just speaks to our trust and knowingness that there is only good coming for us. And we do that by sharing our tithes and love offerings. We invite you to take your gifts symbolically into your hands today as we bless those, but you'll want to go to our unityofjoplin.org website and look for that donate button, and then put in your donation amount, your tithe amount, to the general fund. All right?
And I just
Easy
want to say
peasy.
how much we appreciate all of you who are continuing to tithe and give your love offerings and support us. Because
Yes,
even though we're not in our building, we still have expenses. You know, we're still paying
that's
for the
right.
building and the utilities, and of course, all these
Yeah.
electronics and tech equipment we've had to purchase to be able to do what we're doing in this new
Right.
normal. So we are
That's
so
right.
deeply grateful for your support.
Yes. Yes. Thank you all. So let's continue to give thanks for this giving and receiving process that we believe in by sharing our prosperity blessing. In a universe overflowing with the allness of God, all of the needs of Unity of Joplin and those we serve are bountifully met. From every direction, known and unknown, expected and unexpected, our abundant good is here now. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so we affirm together these tithes and offerings are dedicated to the will and work of Spirit through Unity of Joplin and for the highest good of all. Thank you. That feels good. It always feels good to do that. So just a few announcements. If you are curious on what else is happening with Unity of Joplin, you can always check our Facebook page. You can always go back to that website, unityofjoplin.org, where there is a calendar. You would think that in the midst of a pandemic, there's not a lot going on, but that is not true, not for Unity of Joplin. We've got classes, we've got prayer meditations. There's a ton of things going on. And each night, except Sunday nights, we have an evening check-in full of inspiration for you. 8 p.m. on Facebook.com, our Facebook page. Gordon is there to share just a few minutes of inspiration and just to kind of help get us through each day. And then Wednesday night is the Wednesday night word with the Myers family. They share our daily word and kind of some ways to work with that through the rest of the week. So thank you guys. Thanks for doing that. It helps, believe me.
And Ann, you said that we don't have anything on Sunday nights, but starting tonight, we do.
Yes, that's right. I'm doing a little something over on my Facebook page called Summer Sundays at 8 p.m. Central Time. You're welcome to join me over there. There's just a little tapas, if you will, of just whatever I've been thinking about through the week. I made a post this morning about how we are made for more in this world. And so I think tonight I'll be sharing the first couple of steps to determine your dreams and follow through on making them happen. So check it out, 8 o'clock on my Facebook page. And again, just for about 15 minutes or so.
And Ann,
So
it will be, they can go to just the Unity of Joplin Facebook page, and we'll be having a watch party there.
Oh, fun.
So you can just
Okay.
go to if you don't know Ann's, if you're not a friend of Ann's on Facebook, just go to the Unity Facebook page and you can still join us.
Yeah. But be my friend too. I'd love that. All right. So it's a very full week. And our class is continuing, The Mystics of the Middle Ages. You guys, fascinating discussions. And Gordon has, again, given more and more with his research and his history and his teachings. So tune in Thursdays at 6 on Zoom. Yeah, you need to get the Zoom link. So just send an email to Gordon at unityofjoplin.org. He can send you the link and you can jump in. It's really fascinating. You need to be there. Okay. All right. And yes, I am enjoying the replays of this. I'm not able to attend live, but how to be an anti-racist. Gordon, is there anything you want to say about this? I know you have been really leading this one, and it's reaching and affecting tons of people.
We are having people tune into this from all across the country, from
Awesome.
all ages. And I'd also like to remind people that Ibram Kendi, the author, is going to be doing a personal live Zoom webinar, I guess, for an hour on Monday night.
Awesome.
You can just, I think we have it on our website or our Facebook page. And or you can just Google it. And so he will be doing it in person. But we have a very diverse group and a fun group, and we've had some great discussions. It's for an hour on Monday afternoon, and maybe a little over an hour if we're like last week. We were really engaged and just having a ball. So I invite you to join us.
Yeah, this man, look at those eyes. I mean, this man is a powerful force for good on the planet. So if you can catch him live, I know you will get a lot out of it, and then be able to discuss it in our class with Gordon. So yeah, thanks. We're kind of changing things up next week. We have a guest speaker, Jen Hutchins. She is delightful. I've been participating in her Unity Arts Ministry that she founded. They actually have creativity sessions happening at Unity Village. You can join her Facebook group. She's going to be sharing with us all about unleashing that power of imagination. So you will just love her. She is really, as I said, just a delight and so encouraging and inspiring. So join us next Sunday for our regular service time, but with Reverend Jen. It's going to be great. Wow, that's a lot, right?
Yep.
If you want to talk about it, if you have questions about it, if you have a prayer request, if you have anything that you want to share with Gordon, stick around after the service. We'll do a little online virtual fellowship, and you are welcome to just hang out for a while. And Candy, yes, I'm seeing your question here. Next week's service will continue as usual on Zoom as well as Facebook. So we will Zoom Jen in from Lee Summit and carry on as usual, but we'll miss Gordon. All right. Wow. See, I told you guys there was stuff going on. It's all good though.
We haven't slowed down much through all this, have we?
No, we really haven't. But it's exciting because we're needed in the world, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'm grateful we can do this. So, and I'm really grateful for the time we can have to prepare for today's message. We like to do that by sharing the daily word that kind of is appropriate to the lesson's theme. And we are so blessed that Michael is here to share this with us on the last day of his 39th year of life. Happy birthday, Michael.
Happy birthday, Michael.
Thank you. Well, this has been my 39th year of life. Monday will be my 40th birthday. So big deal. And this happens to be one of my favorite words, harmony. We blend our unique qualities, fulfilling a vision of harmony. What a difference a drop of one color can make when it's added to another liquid color. Primary shades are distinct, yet when combined with one another, they create additional hues. Stirring in more droplets creates still more shades. Blended tints that shimmer like liquid jewels, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. What a difference one person's thought or action can make for a group of people. Like primary colors, each person's God-given qualities shimmer with uniqueness. And in connecting our personal qualities with one another, we create a blessed variety in the human experience. With intuition and interaction, we blend distinct feelings and abilities. Blessings of understanding emerge. With eager participation, we support a vision of peace and harmony. Little children, let us love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. 1 John 3:18.
Beautiful, beautiful. I was just thinking we should repeat this one next week when Jen's here talking about creativity and color. That's wonderful. All right, we have another congregational song, All Things Bright and Beautiful, and then Gordon will take us into meditation. We'll have our special music and then our lesson. So relax, get comfortable, open your heart and your mind.
All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Each little flower that opens, each little bird that sings, He made their glowing colors, He made their tiny wings. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. He gave us eyes to see them, and lips that we might tell how great is God Almighty, who has made all things well. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all.
And as we ponder the bright and beautiful, wise and wonderful creation that God has made, we open our hearts to that energy of creation, to that energy of color, of diversity, of uniqueness. We behold a world of infinite color, infinite texture, infinite sound. And as I sink into this moment, I am aware that with my spiritual senses, I behold not a world of cacophony, not a world of chaos, but a world of harmony, a world of beauty, a world of order. Yes, with my humanness, it may look confusing, even scary. But with the energy of my Christ Spirit, I behold a world that is unfolding in perfect order. Behind the human experience, I see the divine. And I affirm there is only one presence and one power in the universe, and that power is God the Good, unlimited. God the Good, omniscient, omnipresent. And through the turmoil, A divine plan is unfolding. In my spiritual awareness, I can anchor myself in that divine plan, assured that I have a part to play, that I may be a center of peace, a center of knowing, a center of groundedness. I feel that divine intelligence moving through me, guiding me, showing me what is mine to do, how I may be of service in this time. And as I center myself in the presence of God, I am peace-filled and peaceful. I feel safe and protected. I allow the life force that God is to permeate every cell of my being, energizing me to know that no outer virus, no outer dis-ease, no outer circumstance can shake the truth of my being. I am the light of God. I am the love of God. I am the life of God. I am the divine intelligence of God. And as I am, so too is every human being on earth. As I affirm this for myself, I affirm it for all my brothers and sisters, known and unknown. Every color, every nationality, every language, every expression. I am, you are, we are a part of God's infinite rainbow of creation. In the silence, I connect. I connect to all the colors of the world, every form, every being. In the silence, I am one. In perfect peace, I imagine a rainbow of color surrounding me, flowing into me, out through my heart center, connecting with the heart of everybody on earth, connecting with every life form, connecting with every moment, every bit of creation. I feel that rainbow connection that binds all.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers and the dreamers and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep, and have you heard voices? I heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La 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 la.
I feel that rainbow connection. Perhaps it is to be found between our hearts. And so it will be when we see with the eyes of spirit. Thank you, Gary and John and Jerry. That was beautiful. Almost just want to sit for another moment in the silence after that. It's one of my favorite songs anyway, with the way you all did it. It was beautiful. Thank you. Well, today our topic is there is no beauty in a colorblind world. How many times have you heard someone say, or maybe you've said it yourself like I have, I just don't see color. I don't have a racist bone in my body. That is a normal thing to say. It's a common thing to hear or to say, because the dominant language around racial issues today is very much, or has been, on being colorblind with the best of intentions, because it's meant to convey a distaste for racial practices and attitudes. But one of the things that we are learning through these experiences of the last couple of years is that there's a problem with this consciousness, this idea of being colorblind and practicing an ideology of colorblindness. And one of the problems with it is it enables us to ignore racial issues. It's almost as if what we are subconsciously saying is, I don't see color, and so I can't see color-related issues. And everyone, regardless of color, is like me. Sometimes, because of this, it's easy to not see what other people are going through. It allows us to ignore manifestations of persistent discrimination. You know, until just a few years ago, I think we had, as a culture, kind of gotten to a place where we thought, well, we've come so far in the area of race, and we've worked through a lot of our racial issues. And there were those of us who knew that, no, we really haven't come as far as we think, and we still have a lot of work to do. But because of the way things were at that moment, it was very easy to think that we were in a pretty good place, and it had come a long ways. But in the last few years, we have been presented with the fact that, oh, we still have a lot of work to do. We've seen what has happened with the racial tensions and mistreatment of people that have brought to the forefront of our consciousness race and what we still have to work on. It's a very uncomfortable subject. And you may be thinking, well, I'm not really racist, and certainly unity is not racist, and America is not racist. After all, we're a very diverse country, and that we are proud of our diversity. Well, some are, and we now know it's very obvious that many are not. There are still racists in our culture. And even among those who claim to be not racist and strive from the depths of their being to be not racist, there are still subtle acts of racism that go on, and we don't even always know it because we can't see it from a place of our whiteness. We're not in the midst of it. So let me give you an example of what I call soft racism is. And it is an example that came to my consciousness while I was preparing this lesson. And it was not something I expected to see. I'm going to share my screen here so that you can see what I experienced just while I was preparing our lesson. As I was working on this, I thought, well, I'd like to have some slides showing diverse crowds of people with a lot of different races and ethnicities. And so I Googled diverse crowd. And these are some of the slides that came up. We have this one here, which does have some people of color in it, a few. The first one that came up was this one. This was the slide that came up when I Googled diverse crowds.
Gordon, we're not seeing the slide.
For crying out loud, really?
Yeah.
Hang on. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So there you have the first slide that came up. If you look really hard, you can see one person of color way in the back. That was a slide entitled Diverse Crowd. Another one was that one. You know, I think you'd have better luck finding Waldo. Way in the back, there's a couple people of color. And certainly, if you look really close, you can see some ethnic differences. But to me, this is not a diverse crowd. Oops, we're not at Johnny Coleman yet. That's an example of soft racism. I had to look long and hard to find slides that showed diversity. And up until a few years ago, it was not socially acceptable to identify in our culture as being a racist. Now, of course, we're seeing many people that are out there right in front of us identifying as racist. So we know we have work to do. And even those of us who work and strive to practice not being racist realize that just with things like Google, we have work to do. We are discovering that there has been a cost to saying we are colorblind. And while the most well-meaning people can be blind to the ways in which well-meaning people engage in practices that disadvantage people of color, I'm quoting Kendi here, the policies that perpetuate racism still exist. And so you may be wondering at this point, well, how is this a unity lesson? Well, we in Unity believe that we live in a diverse universe. From its earliest incarnation, unity has been a diverse movement. But even we have not always been great at it. Even we have had our learning curve. Charles Fillmore founded unity on the diversity of truth that is found through the diverse religions of the world. He said there's a golden thread of truth that transcends religion. And thus, in this diversity of spiritual practice, this diversity of culture, we can find our oneness. But as I said, even unity went through a learning curve. Because in the early days of unity, and in the early days of Unity School, while we admitted people of color to the ministerial program, they were not allowed to live on Unity grounds. They had to leave the grounds when it got dark. Can you imagine that? Imagine you're a seminary student in the 1950s, and you're a person of color, and you're taking classes at Unity Village. And classes end, and maybe it's winter when it gets dark out early, and you have projects to do with your classmates or study to do in the library. You couldn't do it because you had to be off the grounds when darkness fell, because you were of color, because you were Black or Latinx or something like that. Fortunately, a pioneer, a strong person, applied to Unity School in the 1950s. Her name was she wasn't a reverend yet. Her name was Johnny Coleman. I'm going to put our slides back up here, and please tell me if this does not work. Her name was Johnny Coleman. And Johnny Coleman broke that barrier. She taught unity, how to be more open and accepting. And she eventually became a Unity minister. She was the founder of Christ Universal Temple in Chicago, one of the largest Unity centers in the entire world. She was the president of the Association of Unity Churches, now called Unity Worldwide Ministries. She founded the Johnny Coleman Institute and the Johnny Coleman Theological Seminary. She was a true blessing to us in the Unity movement, and we lost her a few years ago at 93 years old. But she was a powerhouse, and she was a great and wonderful teacher to all of us. Thanks to her, now we accept everybody on the grounds and everywhere else within Unity. We accept people in the LGBT community. We accept people of all nationalities, all ethnicities. We have no racial barriers, but we had to learn. And because we are Unity, we are okay with acknowledging that we are evolving and have evolved and continue to evolve because we're authentic. We stand in integrity. And part of authenticity and integrity is being able to say, yes, we have work to do, always. May we always have something to work on, because why else would we be here? And may we always be at the cutting edge of it. You know, Unity was one of the first places to break the racial barrier, thanks to Johnny Coleman. So let me just turn off the sharing here for a second. So one of the things we have learned is that we live in a universe that loves color. Creation itself is all about color. And again, I am going to share. Look up at the night sky. At first glance, it may look black and white, the black sky with the white moon and stars upon it. But if we look closer, we see unbelievable color. This picture right here is from where I used to live in New Mexico. The Milky Way is not just white stars, it's colorful. And the Hubble telescope has brought us amazing photographs of the night sky and of the color that is our universe. Look at nature. 3 dogs from 1 litter. Same dogs, same breed, 3 different colors. Every form of life loves color. Even our foods have color. We know that the healthiest foods are the most colorful foods. And from the Bible itself, we see color in every form. Think about Joseph's coat of many colors, all the way up to Paul's letters about the beauty of diversity. We are meant to be colorful. We are meant to be unique. We are meant together to form a pleasing whole. I mentioned Joseph's coat of many colors, so let me talk a little bit about it. Most of you are familiar with the story. It's found in Genesis 37. If you want to read the whole story, I'm not going to quote it here. But you may remember that Joseph was the youngest of his father's children and the most beloved. And so his father gave him a coat of many colors. Most coats in those days had short sleeves and were just one color, usually blue or black. And Joseph's coat had long sleeves, which was unusual, and was many colors. It was rich in its color. And of course, in Unity, we know that the characters within the Bible and the stories all have meaning referring to parts of ourselves. It's what we call metaphysics. They're all allegories for energies within us. So Joseph's coat represents the power of imagination, and specifically our power of imagination to throw onto the screen of visibility new thoughts, new ideas, and new creations. It allows us to see the colors of the universe and see how these colors are woven together to create one field of beauty, one tapestry. Our imagination is all about growth and evolution. It's about prosperity. It's about the realization of dreams, because we know it takes all of the colors of the palette to make something beautiful. Jesus dealt with this too. Jesus was aware of this as well. You know, we look at the teachings of Jesus and we think of them in context of our times today. But how often do we stop and think about the people and the culture that Jesus interacted with in his day? As I've shared with you before, Jesus lived in the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, yes, it had its faults. It was a very rigid, very authoritarian empire. But at the same time, especially for its day, it was a very tolerant empire. In Jesus' day, as long as you paid your taxes and didn't create problems, you were pretty much left alone to practice whatever religion you wanted, to be whatever race you wanted. They didn't have divisions by race or even culture. Well, except the Romans, of course, the Romans themselves, the people of the city of the Rome, were at the high end, the top of the totem pole, if you will. But otherwise, you pretty much were equal. And so when Jesus spoke, he spoke to a very diverse crowd. He spoke to Romans. There were Romans in the crowd. There were Africans in the crowd. There were Asians in the crowd. It wasn't just Jews. He was speaking to everybody who was in that culture, everybody who was in attendance. And his teachings resonated with everybody. There was no distinction of class. Later on, Paul was a part of that same culture. And Paul wrote a lot of letters in which he talked about how to be in a community. And before I read what I'm going to share with you here, you have to understand something about Paul, because he's a very difficult person to understand in our context of modern times. But in his day, he wrote letters to churches and communities throughout the Roman Empire. And they all had different congregations and different cultures. And so in those times when he seems to contradict himself from one letter to another, understand that it's because he was writing to different peoples, different cultures, who had different social practices and different ways of gathering. And he wanted to relate to them where they were. So one of the letters that I included in this, because it does speak to this idea of diversity and even race, was from 1 Corinthians, his letter to the Corinthians. And before I share with you, understand that the church at Corinth was a very diverse church. It had people from all over that part of the world who attended it. And it didn't look like churches didn't look like they do today. but they had diversity. And they had cultural diversity, they had racial diversity, and they had economic diversity. And remember, too, that Paul, when he wrote to these churches, was responding to letters he had received with specific questions. We don't think about that ever. This wasn't just something he wrote and that was it. There were letters going back and forth between members of these communities and Paul. And a lot of those letters are available. We do still have them in our collections. And so we know what he was responding to specifically in some cases. But this particular one to the Corinthians, he talks about the idea that we are all part of a greater whole. And this is specifically what he wrote from 1 Corinthians 12. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, all of its many parts form one body. So it is with the Christ. For we are all baptized in one spirit, so as to form one body, whether Jew or Gentile, slave or free. We are all given the same spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made of one part, but of many. Now, if a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? And if the whole body were an ear, where would it be? Where would the sense of smell be? If it were a nose. But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. And he goes on. If the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, and the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you, on the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker and indispensable are indispensable. And the parts that we think of that may be less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are still treated with special modesty. While our presentable parts need no special treatment, but God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. For if one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. So now, if you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a part of it, though he is not speaking of race in this particular instance, he is talking about diversity. He is talking about how, regardless of our economic status, regardless of our ethnicity, regardless of our nationality, regardless of who we love, and regardless of race, we are part of one body. We are part of the body of humanity. We are part of creation. And this is indicative of the consciousness of Jesus' ideas, of the consciousness of the Buddha's ideas, of the consciousness of the divine mind, that there really is only one. Just as each part of the body makes up the entirety of the body, and just as no one part is any more or less important than any of the others, so too are all of the races of humanity. So we can begin to understand that racism is an antithesis to creation itself. It is against God's plan for creation. And you know what's interesting? One of the things I have learned through this study that we're doing on Mondays on how not to be an anti-racist, and I did do more research on it because I had not realized this until I read it in the book. Racism did not exist in the ancient world. There was no concept of racism. And there are those who will say, well, racism has always existed. No, it hasn't. As a matter of fact, it's a very recent creation in human history. And we know where it started. It started with one of the biggest frauds in all of human history. And I knew that before I read the book. I knew this part of it. Many of you have heard of Prince Henry the Navigator. How much do you know about Prince Henry the Navigator? Did you know he was not a prince? And he certainly was not a navigator. In fact, he was scared to death of water. He never stepped foot out of Portugal. Yes, he was related to the royal family. His nephew was in line of succession to be the king of Portugal, but he himself was not. However, he was able to gain great influence economically in Europe, and he did it by creating the slave trade as we would come to know it. I'm going to share with you a story about him. The first global power to construct race happened to be the first racist power and the first exclusive slave trading power using the race of the African people. The individual who orchestrated this trading of an invented people was nicknamed the Navigator, though he did not leave Portugal at all in the 15th century. The only thing he navigated was Europe's political, economic seas, and in order to create the first transatlantic slave trading policies, he was hailed for something he was not and ignored for what he was. So what he began to create was a slave trade using African people. They were not called black in those days. And yes, slavery had existed probably from the earliest of times. We do know that. But slavery in the world before this time was not race-centric. Anybody could be taken and used as a slave. White, black, brown, it didn't matter. And slavery in those days was not the same as it would be in later times. But Prince Henry saw a way to exploit the races of Africa and to give them the identity of being put on earth to be used specifically as slaves. And he himself didn't even write any of this stuff. He had another nephew, who was his biographer, who was a worshiper of Henry, and wrote letters to the popes extolling how great Henry was and how great his ideas were and how wise he was. And so began to establish this idea of using one particular race as slaves. This man's name was Zurara, and his stories chronicled the first major slave auction in Lisbon, Portugal. It was in 1444. And he wrote this, attributed to Henry, but it wasn't written by Henry. Some of these captives are white enough, fair to look upon and well proportioned, while others are like Ethiops or ugly. And despite their different skin colors and languages, they all blend into one group of people, worthy only of being enslaved. Now that idea would begin to catch on in Europe. And the first time we see the word race being used to describe one particular group of people was by the French poet Jacques Dubray in 1481. And again, in 1606, when Jean Nicole, by the way, who was the person who introduced tobacco to Europe, from which we get the word nicotine, he formally identified race as this. Race means descent. Therefore, it is said that a man, a horse, a dog, or any other animal is from either good or bad race. Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist, who gave us the nomenclature we use to define species and genres today, also wrote about race. He was the first person to split Homo sapien into what he decided were 4 races. He said there was Homo sapien europaeus at the top of the racial hierarchy, which makes up the most superior character traits. They are vigorous, muscular, flowing blonde hair, blue eyes, very smart, inventive, covered by tight clothing, and ruled by law. The next race on the hierarchy is Homo sapiens asiaticus. Melancholy, stern, black hair, dark eyes, strict, haughty, greedy, covered by loose garments, and ruled by opinion. And then the third racial step is Homo sapiens americanus, a mixed race of attributes. Ill-tempered, impassive, thick, straight black hair, wide nostrils, harsh face, beardless, stubborn, contented, free, paints themselves with red lines, and ruled by custom. And at the bottom of the racial hierarchy of Homo sapiens are the Homo sapiens afer, sluggish, lazy, black kinky hair, silky skin, flat nose, thin lips, and elongated breasts. crafty, slow, careless, covered by grease, and ruled by caprice. In 1754, the idea of race that became predominant was established by one person. We know that those descriptions are not true, and yet they became the all-consuming ideas of the races. So as I said, in the length of human history, racism is a very new concept. And by the institutionalizing of race, by dividing people of color, we have created an idea of good and bad. And we have lost our appreciation of the beauty of humanity as a whole. So much so that by the dawn of the 20th century, we had decided that black was bad and white was good. And that would not begin to change, really, until the civil rights era, the 1960s. And it's been a tough, long struggle until today. And even though we had thought we had made great progress, we now find ourselves once again struggling to overcome 5 centuries of racism. 5 centuries in the 1.4 million year history of Homo sapien. And yet how pervasive and how powerful it has become. We are still trying to figure out how to see color, and more importantly, how to see color as God sees color. So what does it mean to see color? To be color visual instead of color blind? Well, seeing color allows us to see where humanity needs healing. It allows us to clearly see where there is covert racism as well as overt racism, where there are policies that deny human dignity or value. And often these policies were made with the best of intentions, made in an attempt to right wrongs, but without the understanding that we can have when we can see with the eyes of God, when we can see through our spiritual vision. Seeing color allows us to see the totality of God's creation. You may not know it, but we have learned, especially with the Human Genome Project that's been going on for about a decade now, we have learned that Homo sapien human beings share 99.9% of the same DNA. It's only 0.1% that separates us. And that 0.1% has to do with things like skin color, which are really nothing more than a genetic mutation due to the origin environment of our ancestors. There's actually maps that show what the skin gradation is or was among the earliest Homo sapiens, and it is very much contingent upon latitude and temperature. But most important, when we see color, we see the beauty of the human soul. You know, in nature, every ecosystem requires a number of different plants, different animals, different organisms in order to grow and flourish. When there is sameness, mutations occur that eventually lead to the end of the species. But where there is diversity, the species flourish. When it comes to surviving and thriving, the earth and its creatures need diversity. If diversity is a necessary part of nature, then it only makes sense that people need diversity in their communities, because diversity inspires cultural growth. It makes society richer. When a community has people of different backgrounds, different beliefs, different skills, different races, different cultures, each person is empowered to contribute their unique story and gift to create a greater whole. There are 5 thoughts about racism I'd like to share with you. Oops, I didn't show you Prince Henry the Navigator. Well, that was Prince Henry, who wasn't a prince. You are saying it, right?
We are not.
You're not. Can you see it now? Yes, okay, thank you. All right, so how is color good for us? There's 5 thoughts about how color is good for us. The first, diversity is beautiful. Maya Angelou wrote this: "We should all know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all of the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." The second is, diversity gives us strength. Stephen Covey writes this: "Strength lies in differences, not in similarities." Diversity makes life interesting. Barbara Streisand said this: "Just imagine how boring life would be if we were all the same." My idea of a perfect world is one in which we really appreciate each other's differences. Short, tall, Democrat, Republican, black, white, gay, straight. A world in which all of us are equal, but certainly not the same. You know, I was so reminded of that when I was in Washington, D.C. last October. And we had gotten back from, I think it was the day we went to Mount Vernon, and we took the boat back and landed at National Harbor, and they were showing on the big screen on the beach. They have this massive, like 40-foot screen on the beach, and they were showing the women's basketball finals game. And I'm not that into sports or anything, but we stopped and looked, and I watched the crowd. People of every color, every nationality, speaking different languages, women in the head coverings playing with children of all colors, sitting and talking with people in different clothing, from t-shirts and sandals and shorts to full robes like they wear in the Middle East to ethnic clothing. And I thought, this is the tapestry that is beautiful. Another saying, and interesting, it makes life interesting. Another one is, diversity propels us forward. Justin Trudeau said, "The diversity is the engine of invention. It generates creativity that enriches the entire world." And finally, diversity inspires unity. Not just unity us, but unity, the unity of all people. Jacqueline Woodson said this: "Diversity is about all of us, and about us having to figure out how to walk through the world together." Diversity inspires unity, and unity takes work. It takes work as a people. It takes work as a spiritual path. And it's the only way we are going to create unity in our world is by seeing the colors of our world. Open our eyes. See the color of all people. Recognize where color is divisive and transform color into a unifying energy. I think we are seeing it begin to happen with the Black Lives Movement and the Justice Movement and all the coming together, the people of all colors standing shoulder to shoulder, taking classes together, working together to make this happen. But it's going to take all of us who care. It's going to take all of us who love, all of us who understand the beauty of diversity to make it happen. You know, in Unity, we say we want to co-create a world that works for all. And we start with a clear vision. Because once we can see clearly, we can come to the understanding that Paul spoke of in Ephesians. And before I read you this part, I want to share with you that if the Ephesians, the church in Ephesus, was a very diverse church. It was a port city. And they were a mixed race congregation. They had seafarers from all over the Mediterranean, from Africa, they were Black, from Egypt, from the Middle East, they were Arabs, from Rome, of course, even from as far away as India. The people of the Middle East of the Roman era were far better traveled than we thought. So these were people that would come together to learn and to worship. They were merchants, they were seamen, they were caravan owners, they were the wealthy, poor, Black, Arabian, Roman. And they struggled to form a community. And though they weren't separated by race, they were sometimes separated by economic status. And one of the things we know is that Paul had received a letter from the leaders of the Ephesus church in which they said, we want to separate our congregation because, you know, these people who sail the seas, the fishermen, they smell. We want to put them in a separate area. I imagine a lot of people smelled in those days. But they were struggling with this. And Paul wrote this back. He said, we are all God's masterpiece. We are created in the image of the Christ so that we can do the good things that God planned for us long ago. Paul knew, he could see it, that we are all a masterpiece, that the race of Homo sapien, which is one race and one race only, although it shows up in many colors, in many expressions, it is one. Paul knew, as we know, that this race is a masterpiece. It is a painting of many colors. It is a work of many notes. And just as a masterpiece that is a painting has different colors and different textures, or a masterpiece that is a work of music has many instruments and many melodies, the masterpiece that is Homo sapien, that is humanity, is a masterpiece of race, of ethnicity, of culture, of language, of color. It is the masterpiece that will emerge when we come together, when we can see clearly. For the only beauty in the world is the beauty of color. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, thank you. As always, good food for thought. Thank you. And if you like today, you're going to want to keep coming back. If you're visiting us or just happen to land on our Facebook page, we are delighted. So please stick around. Any questions you have about Unity or today's lesson with Gordon, we are here to support you and answer your questions. And you're always welcome to visit us anytime. We like to celebrate our children, not just our physical kids that join us on Sundays, but also that child within. And we do that with a special blessing because we know that the children of today are the future of tomorrow. So let's do it. Children, you are a perfect child of God, and God and I love you just the way you are. And that is true. All right, we will move into our peace song and our prayer of protection.
On earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, we are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Admires.
And so let us conclude by saying together, our prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And all is well. Amen.
Namaste.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Yeah, and we will stay on for a few minutes if anybody has anything, any questions or any comments or just wants to say hi. I'd like to say hi to all of the people who have joined us on Facebook. See if I can see all of you all y'all. Leo and John Suttles. Good to see you, John, and Bruce. Hope you are doing well, Bruce, and Carolyn, and Lynn, and Elise, and Evelyn, and Jamie, and I got to get my glasses on because there's so many. The writing is tiny. Jennifer and Rachel and Dagoberto. Hi, Dagoberto. I have to say, they are, that family was somebody I had the thrill of knowing, the honor of knowing in New Mexico when I was a school teacher. And I just so love watching how your kids have grown up. It's so nice to see that.
Oh, that's cool.
Bill McKenzie and Janie and Peggy Hill and Jim and Neely. Well, Neely, you're here on Zoom too. And Bob Jones. And wow, a lot of you. It's so nice to see you all. And anybody who I missed, I apologize. I missed you. I can't see everybody on there. It's so many of y'all, but we're so glad you're here with us.
That's cool.
Isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.